Back in my early 20s, I was majoring in biology. And I don't want to brag, but I did get 97% on my last lab report. But despite being able to tell you how the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, I could not tell you how I was feeling at any given point in time. If you asked me, "How are you?" I'd respond, "Good," with a disembodied 5,000 yard stare into the distance while I tried to avoid my existential dread. Expressing a normal range of emotions wasn't safe as a child. If I was angry at being abused, it's because I was judgmental and unforgiving. If I felt lonely or sad, it's because I was too selfish and that's why I didn't have any friends. I wasn't even really allowed to be happy or to sing or read a book because that was annoying and criticized as well. So I learned to be neutral, invisible, small, palatable, and numb. So if you feel flat, disconnected, emotionally dull, you're not broken. It's like the last remaining embers of a campfire. All you need to do is give it some kindling, and just like the phoenix, it can spring back to life. So you feel like you've evolved, but numbness is not balance, it's emotional castration. True regulation is not the absence of feeling, it's the capacity to hold intensity without collapsing into it. It's the ability to experience rage towards people who've betrayed you without acting on that anger. You don't have to burn their house down, you don't have to scream at them in the street, but you allow yourself to feel that rage and you don't feel guilty about it. And you don't allow yourself to think that you're broken for experiencing a perfectly normal human emotion. Hi, it's me, your internet auntie. And these are the reasons you might be feeling a bit numb, and more importantly, what you can do about it. Social conditioning and domestication. From childhood, we are trained to prioritize external validation over internal truth. We learn that being liked is safer than being honest, that politeness is more important than boundaries. Over time, this conditions our nervous system to ignore the subtle internal signals in favor of social expectations. Think about how so many kids are forced to hug relatives and friends of the family that they don't know and don't necessarily like. And you see the kids sort of like turning away, hugging the parent, like, please don't make me hug them. And they get pushed into hugging someone that they don't trust. So we're taught at a very young age that our bodies don't belong to us and that our boundaries are not as important as other people's demands. We're taught that we have to perform in order to please others. We're taught to smile even when we don't feel safe. And yet, no one feels entitled to hug a wolf. We respect wolves because we know that they will bite us if we overstep their boundaries. We accept that their trust has to be earned slowly over time with consistency and respect. But as children, we had no way of biting. We couldn't enforce our boundaries, so instead we adapted to an environment that doesn't respect our needs. We become agreeable, we become palatable, compliant, obedient, people pleasing. We forgot how to grow teeth. We enter learned helplessness, where the safest strategy is to disconnect from our instincts and perform what is expected of us. And as adults, that learned helplessness turns into a victim mindset, where we feel as though life is something that's just happening to us, rather than life being something that we actively choose. This is the over domestication of the wild woman. The body learns my needs are inconvenient and other people's demands are more important. This instinct doesn't disappear entirely. This instinct doesn't disappear entirely. It's like the last remaining ember of a campfire. Reawakening instinct begins with a simple reversal. Noticing when you're performing instead of feeling. Notice when you say yes, but you want to say no. Notice when your body tenses, but your mouth smiles. The goal here is not to become aggressive or reactive or explosive. It's to become honest with yourself about what you're really feeling and what your needs and preferences actually are. Trauma and betrayal. Trauma teaches the body a terrible lesson. When I listened to myself, it made me more unsafe. When someone oversteps an emotional or a physical boundary and we speak up for ourselves, and then we're punished for it, we learn to suppress that instinct in order to stay safe. And when safety is violated despite obedience, the nervous system begins to distrust its own perception. This is especially true in cases of gaslighting, emotional manipulation, and betrayal from someone that you love. We start to believe that instinct is dangerous because it didn't protect me last time. So let's say you don't like being spoken to in a condescending way, and you say something about it, and then the person says, "Oh, you're too sensitive. You're imagining it. That never happened." That's gaslighting. The other person doesn't want to take responsibility for the way they're speaking to you, so instead they place the burden of responsibility onto your shoulders, as though there's something wrong with you for wanting to be treated like an equal, rather than there being something wrong with them for the way that they speak to other people. This is also called deflecting, and it is a form of emotional abuse. These are people who are hiding from their own shadow. They're not doing the work of integration. So they demand that you perform overtime emotional labor in order to compensate for their laziness and cowardice. So you override yourself, you suppress yourself and your own needs in order to enable their behavior. And you do this again and again and again. The instinct never vanishes, but it gets reclassified as anxiety, as you being too sensitive. You second guess yourself. You don't think you're capable of perceiving reality. You might think you suffer from paranoia. You still feel the instinct, but you no longer believe it. You no longer listen to it. This is why so many of you have the false belief that you don't have good instincts because you've been trained to ignore them over such a long period of time. But the real issue is you don't know how to distinguish between your anxiety and your intuition. Now, anxiety can lead you astray, but then you make the false assumption that because your anxiety leads you astray sometimes, that all of your instincts and anxiety and intuition, none of it can be trusted. This is black and white thinking. Let me ask you a different question. If I give you a bowl of M&Ms and I tell you that I might have poisoned 20% of them with arsenic, but I can't remember, but help yourself. How many M&Ms would you eat? None, I hope. I mean, why not take the chance? But this is what you're doing when you ignore all instincts because sometimes they might be wrong. Is instinct always accurate? Is not the correct question to be asking. The question you need to ask yourself: what is the cost of ignoring a warning system that is mostly accurate? If something feels off, if a person feels off, a situation feels off, you're walking home at night and you just don't like the feeling of that dark alleyway and you don't know why, trust yourself. Even if it's nothing, it doesn't matter. Show your body that you're listening and that you trust it. Honoring these instincts trains your body to speak up again because you're showing it that you're listening again. So, before we move on to the third and sneakiest reason we might feel numb inside, we're building a little community of like minded people over on Patreon. So, if this is resonating with you and you want to go deeper, there's a more in depth video on reclaiming your instincts over on Patreon now. For those of you who already downloaded my ebook, Awakening the Wild Woman, and you've worked with those journaling prompts, this is the next layer of that topic. We're moving from gathering the buried bones to reanimating instinct itself. Oh, and it's definitely not a cold. So, the third and sneakiest reason that you might feel numb inside, you might mistake numbness for spiritual enlightenment or emotional maturity. At a certain stage of healing or self development, emotional numbness might masquerade as wisdom or self control. You don't feel reactive anymore. You don't get triggered. You feel calm, neutral, above it all. And that flatness gets labeled as emotional mastery, detachment, inner peace. But what's actually happening is not transcendence, it's withdrawal from sensation. The nervous system has learned to shut down in order to avoid feelings that you don't yet know how to hold. So you describe yourself as fine, unbothered, detached. But notice what's missing. There's no real joy, no enthusiasm, no desire, no creative fire, no hunger, no grief when you experience loss. You can analyze everything, understand everyone, explain your feelings intellectually, but you don't feel them in your body. And it feels virtuous because you're not being dramatic, you're not needy, you're not messy, you're not too much. So you feel like you've evolved, but numbness is not balance, it's emotional castration. True regulation is not the absence of feeling, it's the capacity to hold intensity without collapsing into it. It's the ability to experience rage towards people who've betrayed you without acting on that anger. You don't have to burn their house down, you don't have to scream at them in the street, but you allow yourself to feel that rage and you don't feel guilty about it. And you don't allow yourself to think that you're broken for experiencing a perfectly normal human emotion. It's allowing yourself to experience deep grief without being consumed by it, because you know that the emotion will pass at the end of the day and you will be okay. Spiritual maturity is not being unaffected by life, it's being fully affected without being shattered by it. If nothing moves you, nothing is actually moving through you. And what looks like enlightenment might actually be a nervous system that learned to go offline.